You're listening to Across the Pondcast. Cybersecurity rants and war stories from both sides of the Atlantic.
Hello and welcome to Across the Pondcast, a show where we talk and occasionally rant about cybersecurity topics with perspectives from both sides of the Atlantic. I am Tib3rius. I'm joined as always by the one and only Mr. Andy Swift. Andy, how have you been?
I am good, my little cuddle waffle. It's been a very exciting week for me. I've been speaking at conferences and all sorts. It's been great. Lots of teleprompter mayhem. Might talk about that later. Who knows? How have you been?
Pretty good. Pretty good so far.
So far. It's still Sunday. We can still screw this up.
Damn, you've leaked our recording days. The title of today's episode is Our Worst Testing Experiences. Pretty self-explanatory there. I think this will be different to our testing disasters episode, however, because instead of us messing up, this was other people messing stuff up.
Far more common, obviously.
Yeah, we're almost perfect.
Yes. At least that's what we'd have you believe. Though we hadn't just done a podcast on all the screw-ups we've made.
Shh, Andy, shush. Well, before we start, this show is made possible thanks to our sponsors. If you want to sponsor an episode, please send an email to sponsors@acrossthepondcast.net for more details. So we were discussing this episode before we started recording, and I think we determined this is probably going to be an Andy-heavy episode simply because it seems like more problems happen when you have to go on site, which, as most people will know, I generally just test web apps these days, and most web apps I can test remotely. Though, there are definitely some instances where there were, like, remote mess-ups.
Yeah, always happens on site. I think there's more scope for stuff to go wrong, usually. Project managers have got to get you access to stuff, right? Got to get you access to networks. Whereas web apps generally are quite smooth, I think, especially when I've done them. You do a lot more of them than I do, but
yeah, they generally the only issues we generally have with web apps is like customers getting credentials to us on time. I feel like it's a problem as old as testing. Like you tell a customer you have a test next week. Well, you tell them generally you got a test in 4 weeks' time. You know, that's how usually they get scheduled out, and it's like, you know, a couple of weeks before you might send an email saying, hey, we need those credentials, and a week before, and then invariably like the Friday before the test is due to start, you're like, here are some credentials, can you test them? And it's like, yeah. Customers generally, especially the ones that you've worked with a lot, tend to get better at it, and they want to get their credentials validated as much as you do because they don't want to have wasted time on a test. So, you know, if I start Monday testing and my credentials aren't working, honestly, it frustrates me because I want to be testing, but it doesn't really impact me. It's going to impact the test. That's it. So it's really the customer that suffers at the end of the day through their fault.
Yeah, you're right. That's a tale as old as time. It's never going to stop either, is it? Let's be honest. It's either that they won't give you credentials, or the site won't be up, or something like that, or the URL won't work, or the authentication won't work, or you log in and there's like a load of broken stuff, and you go, yeah, well, that bit hasn't been developed yet. Like, well, why are you testing now? What bit doesn't work? And it turns out to be like a core functional feature of the actual application. So do you plan on testing that like soon once you've developed that bit? No, this is the only round. Okay, good. Yeah, you're right. The worst case in those sorts of things are you put your feet up or you go and do something else for a bit, don't you? It doesn't really impact you hugely. Whereas on the internal, on the network side of things, can be quite impactful, quite disruptive. Especially if you're doing like testing at data centers and things, or you're doing any kind of overnight testing. Weird things happen overnight. And I'm pretty sure most clients just seem to... There's two types of client I find when you're doing over and sort of out of hours stuff. There's the overprotective type that will literally hold your hand walking through the door and like not leave your side all night long and be on your shoulder the entire time. And then there's a client that just doesn't care. And just lets you into their own data center in the middle of the night on your own to roam around to find stuff. I've had both. Yeah, so the first one I'll talk about is there's this tiny little data center in the middle of nowhere. And I mean the middle of nowhere in England. And okay, granted, in America, you do a middle of nowhere pretty good.
We have many, many, many middles of nowhere.
Yeah, you sort of could die in the middle of nowhere. That sort of middle of nowhere. Whereas we have more just like, I know you're probably only about 10 minutes away from the next service station sort of thing. But yeah, middle of nowhere. And it was the middle of the night as well, down at this data center. And they had nothing around it. There was just a data center in like a field pretty much and nothing else around this field. And like inside, I was talking to like the guy in reception, like the security guard, because he was the only other one there. The rest of the office was literally abandoned for like the day. I arrived at 8 o'clock, I think it was. I did my induction on site there because you have to go through inductions every time you go on site to these sorts of places. If it's somewhere you haven't been before, and they'll put you through this induction process. Like, hey, have you seen a fire extinguisher before? Oh, better not use that ladder incorrectly because, you know, you might fall and like the ladders they've got are like a foot high. Yeah, okay. So you have to go through that same stuff every time. And it's hilarious. But I was talking to him, the guy in security, and he was like, yeah, everyone clocks off here about 6 o'clock or something. The only ones here are me, you, and the guy that's going to do your induction. And he's only here till 8 o'clock. So, okay, great. So I was like, do I get food here anywhere? Is there anywhere to go to get food? Is there a shop? And he was like, no, there's no shop. I was like, oh, what do you mean there's no? And he was laughing when he told me this. And he's like, I was like, what do you mean there's no, there's nothing anywhere near like a Tesco's or a petrol station or no, nothing. And it was like, there was no method of getting out anywhere in the middle of the night. And like, you couldn't really call taxis to that place quite easily either. So you're kind of stuck. He's like, well, we've got some vending machines in there. I was like, okay. All right, the drinks machine will have something good in it. No, it just had Red Bull in it. Literally Red Bull and sugar-free Red Bull. I was like, okay, well, this is good. So I will Haribo and Red Bull my way through the night. That'll be fine. Nothing bad will happen here. But no, it's a terrible combination if you ever do decide to replace your entire dinner with 2 packets of Haribo and Red Bull. I thought it was a great idea because it was late at night and I was like, if you're doing night shifts and stuff, you should probably have like a little sleep during the day or something like that. I didn't. I just kind of powered through and then went through the night on Haribo and Red Bull. So I was like, right, I've got to wake myself up. I've got to go and do this test. And then it turns out like it's not very good for your heart, really. So I had like a.
How much Red Bull did you drink?
It was like, you know, there's large, not the small cans. It's one of the larger cans.
Oh,
I don't know how many milliliters they are, but they're like they're the chunky ones. So I had one of those and 2 packets of Haribo, and I was buzzing for like an hour, I think maybe, and I was like bouncing off the walls. And the security camera footage is probably hilarious, but I was having a great time. Popping shells left, right, and centre, you know, as you do, and then I crashed. I was like, I can't stay awake anymore. It took its toll on me, that one. My heart was like racing and pounding the whole way through. So yeah. Moral of the story: don't do that. I've since learned to take a packed lunch with me, or to ask about food and canteens, and to check the address I'm going to because it was literally in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. That's moral to the story. Take your own food. So, that's not the only fun that you can have in a data center overnight, replacing your dinner with sweets. We've also had other times with over-trusting clients. This is the type 2 person who just trusts you with the keys to the kingdom for no reason. And I don't know if it's just because no one wants to come down in the middle of the night as well. I find it quite peaceful going to data centers at night. I quite like it. People just leave me alone. It's quite nice. I could just get on with like what I'm doing and like have no other distractions. And that's lovely. But it does get a bit lonely sometimes. And I remember where this client sent us to this site. It's just outside of London, I think it was. And it was a very weird place. It was down like a few like weird little alleys around the back somewhere. It's one of those hidden away data centers that really doesn't look like a data center. It was like next to a couple of abandoned old warehouses and like an old Chinese supermarket type of thing. It was pretty run down around the back there. And like the client was quite happy for us to be there on our own. They said, "Go in, we've got your name down. We've given you access to this, and this." And we're like, "Okay, well, how do we know where to go?" Like it's a data, so presumably you have client stuff in here and other important stuff you probably wouldn't like us just to pull out by accident. So they gave us this is on the night of the testing as we arrived. They sent through a picture, a JPEG. And this is where it starts to go bad, is when someone hasn't sent you an actual document. They've sent you literally you ask for directions to somewhere and they send you a JPEG. And you're like, there's only one way this is going to go from here. And he had in Paint, MS Paint, not even a Visio diagram or a floor plan of their data center. No. Paint. Like with rectangular box, Paint. rectangular boxes and like little squiggly lines. Not even using a line tool, going to show you the path where you had to go through all the different racks. And they gave me this map that spanned 2 floors, not just one. No, not just one aisle that I had to go down. No, 2 floors of data center hall with squiggly lines and rectangular blocks to represent racks. That's where I had to go. I had to follow this red line through this maze of stuff and hope I was in the right place. So I set off sort of like due north, I don't know, and then like just turned right or left. It was ridiculous, and they just trusted that I was going to make it there. And you've been in data centers with me, right? Like they all look the same.
They're mazes. They're literally mazes.
They all look the same. They even have the same smell, all of them. And like I was like at this conference the other day. I'm sorry, I'm on a tangent now. At this conference the other day, it was Cyber World combined with like part of it was like the data center show or data center world or something like that. And they had everything you need from literally cooling pipes and stuff like that. But there was one stand that made me laugh because all they sold were data center tiles. That's it. And it seemed like a really narrow business model because every time you go to a data center, there's only one type of tile everyone uses on the floor, and it's that weird grey colour that is in every data center. And that was their entire business, is they just sold those. I was like, anything special about them? I was like, no, mate, they're just tiles. I was like, good. Good. By the way, probably give a shout out to those people. They are probably the only stand that didn't have AI enabled written all over like their marketing stuff.
You've given them ideas now.
Yeah. Well, the neighbours next door somehow had AI-enabled cooling pipes, so I don't know how that works.
I've thought of a great idea for an AI-enabled tile. Instead of the customer sending you a JPEG diagram of how to get to a rack, you just ask the tiles, how do I get to this rack? And they just light up and show you the way.
Stop the episode. Oh, that's a genius idea. Let's do that.
You're like, excuse me, tile. How do I get to this rack? And it'll be like thinking. And then it'll just draw like a line.
I feel we need to name it as something other than tile.
It'll be tile, but it'll be spelled lowercase t, uppercase AI, and then lowercase le.
I like it.
TAIL.
I genuinely think we have a business case here. I'm not going to lie. AI tiles is great. We're doing this.
I don't think it is, but okay, whatever, let's do it. One question I did have about what you just said, though. You mocked the customer for the JPEG Paint image. Did it lead you to the right rack?
We'll never know. I poured some gables out. So, no, it did lead me to the right rack. It did. It really did. And that's because I found a report from last time we did it, last year, when they did it in the daytime and they had someone escorting the person that did it last year. And there was a handy rack reference that they wrote down last time in the testing notes. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have made it. So I got to the right rack and I opened it up And, well, the port that they had told me to plug into on a switch wasn't actually available. Like, there was a cable in it. And I don't know about you, but if I go into a data center and there's some cables plugged into a switch, my first instinct really isn't just to go and, like, pull them out.
Call yourself a pen tester? That's exactly my first Oh, what does this do?
Just a pair of scissors, just walk in and go, whoop, wait, not a service. You're vulnerable. But yeah, it was, and it took them several hours after that to find someone in the middle of the night who could actually talk me through if it was safe or not to pull that cable out of that port. Turns out it was completely redundant port and cable, but like,
was it just dangling and with like the open end?
The link light was on. There was something. It was connected to something.
Okay.
But apparently, it was something completely unimportant. And I was okay to pull it out. There were no other 3 ports on the switch as well, so there's no other option. They're like, are you sure it's this one? And like this guy who just clearly woken up in the middle of the night he wasn't really happy. But he was like, yeah, just pull it out. But I did pull it out and it was all fine. And it was like, it did work, to be fair to them. The only little snag was I got stuck in an area trying to find a canteen of some sort to make like a cup of tea or something. I don't know, probably. And there was like a sign that was like this way to like the sort of, I don't know what you call it. It's like a little kitchen, I guess. I guess people used it when they worked on site, maybe. This is a different site to the one with the Haribo, by the way. So yeah, little kitchen. So I was like, okay, I'll go and make myself a cup of tea. There's a sign that says it's all fine. And I walked through the door and like I went to this sort of kitchen area and then realized like all of the doors had like keycard access on them. But it was only one way, so you could get out perfectly fine. So you could walk out the door fine. If you're inside the data center hall, you can walk out the door towards the kitchen, no problem at all. You can walk into the kitchen, no problem at all. If either of those doors shut, you need a key card to go back the other way. Which I didn't have because I left it in my bag next to the rack.
Oh no.
So I had to phone up this number. It was like printed on like this laminated sheet stuck to the kitchen wall. If you're an idiot, call this number. And no one picked up. No one picked up. And there was like 4 numbers on there. And the one for that site that I was at didn't pick up. And I was like, okay, great. So I phoned one of the other sites, which was like a data center across the other side of London or something. I spoke to them and they're like, I don't know, we'll give the guy a phone call on his mobile. I hope he comes and gets you. And again, it's just one of those things of like, there's only you and the security guard inside. So I don't know. It was a mess. So yeah, always carry your key card with you.
Yeah.
Just full of lessons, really. So far, we have invented a product, decided that Haribo does not make a good dinner, and discovered that diagrams in Paint are not the best way to navigate through a data center. What else we got?
Well, I was going to bring up, because obviously I don't have much to say in terms of worst testing experiences, just because, web apps, right? They always go smoothly most of the time. One thing I will mention, mostly because I haven't had a customer do this in such a long time, I feel like it's safe. But there are certain customers who have the weirdest, the worst access configurations. And the ones I absolutely just hate testing is anything that requires me to use Citrix.
Oh.
Like, Citrix has always been bad. And even though the 100% browser-based Citrix they have now is just, it's still bad, and I hate it. And like, copy and paste is just a nightmare, and just everything is terrible with Citrix. I don't know why people use it still. When you have perfectly logical solutions like VPNs, I just don't understand why Citrix is still a thing. I don't mind. So obviously, let's maybe rank the best ways to access customer web apps that are internal only, right? So they're internal only, or at least not internet accessible generally. The best way is they just allow list your IP address. That's the best way, because that's basically just putting it on the internet for a single person. Single IP, sorry. All the networking people in the comments are like, IP address isn't a person. It's like, yes, okay. But that requires, though, that it have some externally facing interface anyway, or that you route. So, okay, sometimes that works. It's always lovely when that works. Sometimes it doesn't. The next best thing after that is OpenVPN, right? OpenVPN is great because it's open. Because you can pretty much get it to run on anything. So it doesn't matter if you're using Windows, it doesn't matter if you're using Linux, Mac, you can, generally speaking, get OpenVPN to run on anything. After that, there's the other VPNs. We'll just group them. So like Cisco AnyConnect, right? Although OpenConnect is great if you haven't used OpenConnect. But AnyConnect and I'm just going to put etc. AnyConnect I feel like is used so often that but there are definitely others. AnyConnect is fine. And then it's like then we get down to the combinations. Before Citrix, we get into the combinations so you have to connect via a VPN, but then you have to use RDP. And you have to RDP onto a jump box, and then from the jump box, install your tools and use that. The slightly better than that, I feel, is a VPN, but you have an SSH jump box. Right, SSH jump box is nice because at least you can do port forwarding on that. Right, you can do tunneling and stuff. So it goes like the SSH, then RDP. But if we're getting worse progressively, and then we get to Citrix. There's nothing worse when doing any kind of testing remotely than using Citrix. It's just awful.
It's one of those ones where Citrix testing in its own is its own type of testing. It's its own category. Breakout testing for Citrix is literally its own category of testing. So it's kind of weird to then be doing another test on going through Citrix. It's just cumbersome and horrible. It really is. It's not very nice.
Yep. Copy and paste doesn't work properly. No. So I had a friend of mine. I think he created a script which it did copy and paste via Citrix, but it worked so you would run the script and give it the thing you wanted to paste, and it would type it. It would it hijacked your keyboard and just typed. So because it doesn't handle paste properly, it just but it'll handle keystrokes regularly, typing. Yeah. So it would literally just pretend to be typing the thing that you wanted to copy, just very, very fast. So that's good. But still.
It's brilliant. I mean, at least if you are using Citrix, I guess you have a load of sort of pre-written issues you can sneak into your report as extra stuff.
If you're doing web app testing, that's the thing, because we're testing web apps via Citrix. I'm not testing the access at all. I don't do access testing for Citrix anymore, but yeah. Just testing via Citrix is just awful.
We do it a lot in other types of testing as well. Even done it for weird infrastructure tests as well, which is really odd. Go figure. Go figure. It is weird. We're testing requirements are always disgusting. Got one in here, the next one about laptops, testing laptops as well. The show notes here say Angry Andy. I don't know. So on weird access requirements, not just Citrix, not just weird remote stuff. By the way, while you're listing VPNs, WireGuard. I love WireGuard. Freaking love it. If you haven't used it, try out WireGuard. I like it. I'm on commission. I'm not sponsored. If you do, there's an opportunity. But yeah, we're testing requirements like laptops. When the access requirement for the person at the other end is so complicated that they feel the need to not just allow your IP address, not to allow you access to a VPN, not to even have you on site to go through their offices and route through there to gain access. No, too complicated, all of those. Instead, what we'll do as the shortest path of least resistance is we'll ship you one of our corporate laptops to do the testing from. To gain access to our application. That's when you know you're kind of next level of screwed up. And is it a Linux-based laptop? No. Does it have any useful things on it? No, it's a Windows build with all of their restrictions on it and their regular user profiles. Oh, good. You had this? Is this something you've experienced in your time?
It is not often. I will say that. The main issue I have with them is I use Mac.
Mm.
I don't know if it's true, but I would feel like a lot of pen testers in general use Mac, but web app testers, I don't see why we wouldn't use Mac. Like, all of our tools effectively run on Mac, right? Burp runs on Mac. You can install every kind of freaking browser you'd ever need. You can install Homebrew and run Linux-based tools. And if you absolutely need Kali, you can just install a VM, right? So I use a Mac. I have done for years. The main issue with getting a customer laptop is usually it's Windows, and then my entire flow just goes out the window because it's like I use Windows day to day, like as my main operating system because I like playing games, and I really don't want to have to mess around with freaking Linux. Like, I love Linux. I use Linux a lot, but I don't want it as my main OS. But I don't test using Windows, and so there's just a lot of different stuff, and it's just, I don't know, it interrupts my flow. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
I know what you mean by that. Every tester's got like their go-to routine, right? I think. Well, most people I talk to do anyway. And I always find it really interesting when I'm interviewing new people to come into testing and ask them about what their routine is. And I give them like a scenario and I ask what their routine is like, because everyone's got like a different way to solve the same problem. And it's really cool. But what a lot of people find is that take them out of that scenario where they don't have their tools or a familiar environment, and all of a sudden their methodology tends to change a little bit or a lot. I think it's catching a few people out on things like exams as well, because the things like the CREST exams are all via sort of Pearson VUE now. So you go down there and you can log onto a Kali box and go test from there. But the trouble is, I think a lot of testers get so used to like tools in front of them, their own sort of environments, their own Linux builds, they've got all their custom tools on it. Granted, you can load stuff up, but I mean, it's an extra faff and takes you a bit out of your workflow, doesn't it? So yeah, client coming along and giving you a standard Windows laptop with all the antivirus on it and all of their policies applied to it is really not going to be helpful long term. And some of the clients are quite, I'm going to be careful with the word helpful, because I mean, it's not a helpful situation in the first place, is it? Let's be honest. But some of them try to be helpful in the follow-up to that and say, oh, like, we'll install XYZ tools for you, or we'll help you install this, and this, and we'll get that done for you. And it's just, the trouble is, by the time you've done all that, it's so much extra work for everyone involved on both the testing end and the administrative end on their side. But you might as well have just taken any other of the aforementioned options, and it probably would have been quicker and easier, right, to get to that stage. Yeah. So yeah, just ridiculous. And some clients have like said, well, we can only give you this laptop because like it's got a special certificate on it that will allow you access to this application. I've had that before. Echoing
or going back to something you just said about, you know, with the CREST exams, people being taken out of their comfort zone. I feel like that firstly, we should do a whole episode on just exams, I think, because that's always been a major complaint of the OSCP exam, is that it's supposed to be a pen testing exam, and that they don't let you use pen testing tools. Like, you can use Metasploit to catch shells, and you can use one of the exploits, but only once. But it's like, it's just kind of silly, and you can't use SQL map, you know. But it's like, I get what they're trying to do with the whole like focus on manual stuff, but I feel like they just take it a bit to the extreme. And it's kind of that way with you know, if you take it out of your workflow, yeah, of course, you know, it's not going to be a really good test of your abilities, I feel. So, yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, and this is not really related to being given a customer laptop or anything like that, but it is have you ever like literally been inducted as sort of a employee at a customer, like, because you have to be put into their system, and in order to be put into their system, you have to technically be like a third-party contractor / employee sort of thing. And that means you have to take their security training. So
yes,
I've taken security trainings so many times in my career. Like I could have worked for a company like for a year and taken like 3 different security trainings, like once for the company I worked for, and then twice for like just 2 random customers because I was technically in their system as a contractor, and they make all the contractors do their security training.
Yeah.
It's mostly banks. It's banks, financial institutions. They just love it. You have to go through the fraud, waste, and abuse. Like, I know. It's good because after a while you can just speed run the damn thing.
Yes.
And you can just like, especially it's great if you start the training off and they're like, hey, here's a pre-training quiz to see if you even need to take the training. And I'm like, oh, I could probably ace this at this point.
I love this topic because you've just reminded me of something. I wasn't going to talk about it, but it is quite funny because we did exactly the same thing, inducted as an employee, and I've done those mundane inductions as a regular employee, done the health and safety, the phishing tests, and all of that sort of stuff for other people. But my favourite one was when we were working for doing some testing on things like power lines for trains, let's just put it that way, and all the control mechanisms in like substations and things that control the power to the track. And because of where we had to test in all of these substations, and by the way, yet again, those are in the middle of fields, so if you don't know where you're going, it's a bit weird. I can remember turning up to like the middle of a field and like just not having the right footwear on, for example, and having to like trawl through mud to get to this hut in the middle of a field next to a truck. But we had to, when we're doing those, because we were going on site to these really strange places that are literally substations in the middle of fields, and there's lots of electricity running between that and the track. We had to like do this whole course basically on safety, and the safety video was like, how many volts would run through this wire and what would happen if you touched it? And it was like really kind of like noddy questions. And like the answers were like immediate death or you'd be fine. But we had to go through all of this, and it's different things like what color overall should you be wearing for handling or being on this type of site. And it went into depth, like all of these sorts of things that you would never need to know as a pen tester. But we were just treated as like regular employees, like we were going to work on the tracks or something. It's the same test, the same site test everyone has to do. You have to sign on the same way, and you got given a nice little presentation card at the end, like a certificate. But it's like a little card that you could show to say you've done the training, it's up to date, and you were allowed on site to go and work in these little substations. So it was quite cool. We had to buy all the overalls as well. It's like all the different coloured overalls for working on different types of substation. There's one for electrical, one's for like gas and like different things like that. Like different colours mean different things, apparently. So we had to go and buy them. And like the correct hard like helmets and boots and everything. It was quite good. But yeah, well, absolutely mad. But yeah, we did get into some strange places, like really strange places. Okay, last thing to talk about, I think, from this one. This little episode of mess ups, we should call it that. It's a good title. The final one I'll leave you with is build reviews. And this is quite an interesting topic because I feel that a lot...
I hated doing build reviews.
You're glad you're out of it?
I'm so glad I don't do build reviews. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I hate them and I like them at the same time. I like methodical things that have like benchmarks or checklists next to them, and I could just go through them. But there are so many little nuances with build reviews, and so much context you have to absorb in a very short space of time. Otherwise, your build review is just going to be all over the place. Like it's very easy just to compare a build against like the CIS benchmarks and go, yep, that's it, good, and then miss the entire context of what that box does. It's like by the time you've applied all of your recommendations, like this box just wouldn't function whatsoever. There's always some kind of context you have to take on or understand behind the scenes to make proper recommendations. But yeah, there's a lot to do on build reviews. There's a lot to work through. There's massive checklists. Everyone has them, either customized ones or they take them from other places like CIS or anywhere else. And some people automate the checks to speed things up, especially if you've got like 10, 20 build reviews to do in a short space of time. There's an amount of automation you can do for things like registry settings and such if you're checking those quickly. But long story short, I suppose, is no one's really going to be like everyone understands what sort of the laborious task that is build reviews. But we've got several clients, actually, I should say. It's not just one. There are several of them that have this real bee in their bonnet about giving anybody, any outsider, any kind of administrative access to a host. Now, be that sudo access for Linux or administrator access for Windows boxes. They just don't want to give it to anyone. Like if you don't work there, you're not on their engineering team, you're not having it. No matter if your job is literally to be there to test and check they've done everything right, which is essentially what a build review is, right? But these two particular companies would not allow us access under any circumstances. We tried to talk them round, tried to tell them exactly what we're doing, and the only way they would allow us access to go and do this was via person proxy, i.e. they wanted to have one of their guys sit there on a terminal typing in the commands that we gave them to for a build review. Now, if you've ever looked at like the CIS benchmarks for like a Linux box, let's just say like an Ubuntu install, they're hundreds and hundreds of pages long of like just commands. Lots and lots of commands. So we're like, what is someone going to stand behind you and just type in every single one of these commands as we tell them, then read us the input back? Like, we're going to be there for days. But no, they wouldn't back down. It wouldn't let us have any kind of sudo access to do it ourselves, so we couldn't just rifle through it quickly. We're giving this poor person sat there, like typing out, who, by the way, wasn't even a Linux administrator. They're a Windows administrator. They didn't know what the commands we were giving them did, which just sheds a hole in that. We could have told them anything. We could have told them to like set up a reverse shell for all they knew. We should probably have done that.
Can you do a sudo rm -rf -set preserve root?
There was a chap on our GRC team that did that because we were just trolling him. He was like, I'm bored of the ISO stuff. I really want to learn some pen testing. So set himself up like set himself up a Linux ISO, and we just jokingly went, "Oh, you should run this command. It's really good. Yeah, it just removes the French language pack." I digress again, but yeah, person proxies. They're terrible, and I don't get the need for them. You're there as a trusted party. You should be giving people access. You can even give us limited access that just doesn't give us literally sudo access to everything. You can set us up with a fairly limited account to get most, like 99% of what we need half the time. Just another one of those hoops to jump through. It's a big hoop.
I was going to say, it's a build review. So couldn't they just give you a build? Like, couldn't they just set you up with some... Like, if they have a build that they deploy, couldn't they just deploy it in some kind of gated environment and give you access to that?
Like a gold image or something. So, yes and no. It again, it depends where you're working or what you're working on. And, like, some of these systems are so complex in what they're doing, they have entire teams that are brought in to literally maintain them. And they're quite funny to sit in test labs with some of these places, because you sit down and there are so many nationalities in one room. Like, I can't tell you. And like their entire teams that they'll look after like one set of hosts or one set of builds, and nobody else knows what it does. No one, apart from these guys speaking in their own language, who are just not, they're having a great time. But like, it's it becomes really difficult to set up like gold builds and things like that for these sorts of things that are in live environments. And when those things are responsible for, if it's a telecom provider, let's just say, if some of those hosts are literally connected to like massive antennas that control stuff over airwaves, like you can't really replicate that in as like a spare build. Sometimes, like, there's been times testing where we've had to literally go and sit in Faraday cages for several days, which is interesting in itself. But yeah, some places you just can't replicate builds in that way. But it's probably why they're so sort of protective over it. But like I said, when the person is sat there who doesn't know what the commands are you're giving them to run, it just sort of defeats the whole object. And you're meant to be there as like the levels of stuff you have to jump through to get there as well. So like you've got to have certain qualifications. You've got to have the right kind of accreditations. You've got to have the right security clearances. You've got to go through their own security clearance to get on some of these sites as well. And at that point, you think you trust them to like do the thing you're paying them to do, which is a build review. Come and check all my stuff, but I would have to do it. It's like turning up to like take your car to an MOT, but you insist that the mechanic can't touch it, but only you can.
Yeah.
I've brought my own spanners. You tell me what to do with them. Where do I put this one?
I guarantee there are car owners like that, though.
I hope there are. I think I might just be one from that one. Never get a car MOT'd again.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, it's crazy. Like, there are the protections that some people have over their environment, and it's like just to bring it back to web apps, it's like so many, and I understand why, kind of, but like so many people are so protective of the code that goes into their web app that like most web app tests are black box, right? They're not. We don't have access to the code, right? Like, well, I say gray box, right? We understand the environment usually. But like hardly any white box tests, just because people are so protective of the code. Even though, like, you ask someone to attack the application, there's a chance that you could get access to the code just by pwning the box.
Yeah.
Like, it's rare, but there are definitely instances where you could like, okay, well, we have an RCE, we now have a shell in the box, we can now read your code. It's like, yeah, but. It's just silly at the end of the day. Like, you trust pen testers to attack your application and tell you how to fix it and not just tell everybody else, hey, by the way, this application is vulnerable, right? We're a business, but you can't trust them with your code. It's at the same time you're probably storing your code in GitLab or GitHub in the cloud somewhere. So you trust Microsoft, and GitLab with your code. Why don't you trust us? Like, it's just silly.
A trusted partner you have hired and selected specifically for testing something. No, we're not going to trust you with anything. Of course. We've done a test before where we've actually been denied things like source code access. And but they did actually have it all. So I was laughing, I was smiling when you mentioned GitHub. They had it all on a public GitHub page. But because they had been so bad about it in the first place, it was what prompted us to go and look for it. And it's like, oh, look what we found.
Yeah.
You should probably not do that. But yeah, it's I like having the full code access. You get so much more from it. And you can sometimes uncover vulnerabilities that you might not have found otherwise.
Oh, definitely wouldn't have found. Like, there are so many vulnerabilities. It's just a time-based thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like, there's that old thing, isn't it, about time frames and how long you spend doing pen tests. And like the longer you spend doing it, the more things you're going to uncover, of course, inevitably. So there's that question about, you should just really enable your testers to like have every opportunity to find stuff. Like, they're not, unless it's a red team engagement or like a blue team engagement or that sort of thing. Yeah, why not give them a few extra things or like the source code and stuff? Because then they're going to find more things for you to fix, and that's the name of the game, is to give you a list of all of the risks that your thing has, application, network, environment, whatever, for you to go and fix. And it's like, well, if you're hampering them doing that and holding them back from doing that, seems like a bit of an odd or limited test, I should say. But hey, sometimes the goal is just attack simulation, and that's fine. But both ways is always better.
Thank you for listening. I've been Tib3rius. He's been Andy Swift. This has been Across the Podcast. You can find all of our social media links in the episode description or on acrossthepodcast.net. And we will see you next time.
See you later. Bye-bye.